Okay. Amateur radio is an integral part of emergency communications. Several things. Yes, a lot of the stuff around here, especially with the Indian River Club, is EMC. Right. Say that again. What is it? I forgot. Foxcom? No, what Steve's always doing. Emergency communication series. Because we don't have any areas members, do we?
The fact that you are a amateur radio operator, you can be considered areas.
Once you have to take training.
If you want to be deployed outside of and if there is a local emergency, you're still qualified area.
Okay. So Aries is the kind of the ARL one, where it's group of licensed amateurs that are volunteers, and they register to use their equipment and their privileges. RACES is similar, but it's part of the FCC Part 97 service, and you have to register with the Civil Defense Organization.
Yeah, and
that one does take training.
Yeah, both Aries and RACES want to have the FEMA certification. Both those models are going away and being replaced with AUGS. The FEMA model, is locally controlled, supported, AUGS is taking more of a top down. And something just come this year. The group that is most on Warren County Areas team, they meet up at Mills, to your fire station. They do classes.
Okay. Basic difference is RACES involves the civil defense.
Yeah, RACES you have to get.
What?
Only case 310.
They still use Colin Brand? Remember Colin Brand?
No.
Hey. Greer before Greer. Brand was the original emergency signal across all people.
Huh? Okay, here's one. We're talking a little bit about Aries and this 1934 ARL. And it's basically amateurs that volunteered to participate. Another one of the club's sites. Down the bottom is the actual Part 97 rule applies. I'm sure you've all studied FCC Part 97.
Every line. Right after the tax code.
What's the amateur radio emergency service? Aries.
Alpha.
Don't have to be military. Is that Mars?
Yes.
Mars. What's the radio amateur civil emergency service? It kind of gives it what?
say, I want to. Yeah, that's been fun. Getting in, bring airways, races, with the leaders.
And some clubs don't want to give up their unless it's an actual emergency.
Yeah.
And there's an argument who defines an actual emergency. What is races?
Delta.
Okay, emergency communications. This is basically just like a normal net, except it's set up for handling emergencies. So you'll have a net control station with a net control operator that basically controls the net. He handles the check-ins, logs them, and directs who can talk to who. It's not just a free-for-all. Net control operator gives you permission to talk if you had traffic, or they may ask if you've got anything to add. He kind of like passes the peace pipe around, token. Which of the following are typical duties of a net control station? Doggy.
Yeah.
What?
Doggy.
Doggy? Delta?
Yeah.
You sure?
Well, let's see.
Or it would be city.
Hey, like it's not necessarily up. You would be operating.
All right. The net control operator doesn't,
He does not.
Right, I think it would be city.
he doesn't establish the time necessarily. It could be the same person, but it's not the net control operator.
So we'll say Charlie.
Does check-ins, calls it to order, handles communications, shuts it down at the end, returns the repeater back to normal operation.
Is that normal operation or is it cold use?
Right, might be general use. The
Yeah,
proper technical.
I've been looking for general. I did see it one time and,
Started first.
I think he's actually forced, if I remember. One of the Leslie Nielsen movies.
Can't remember exactly how Steve closed. One or the other, general use or normal operation.
Yeah, it's just exciting, nice, nice. I like to think general use being some kind and not just use the repeater. I like to meet something.
Which of the following is standard practice when you participate in a net?
And Charlie.
That's it. Now, on a net, when the control operator logs you in towards the call sign, where's that information go?
It does get reported in. So I think it's the South Florida Nader, which gosh, I remember his name. Some fat old guy who still has a little black hair, bigger thing. So, gee, is somebody that old?
It's one problem.
Yeah.
Okay, emergency communications net. Although traffic applies to all of the nets, okay, and that's the messages that you're going to pass between stations. When you check into a net, even if it's not an emergency one, you say whether or not you have any traffic. Handling traffic, this refers to the fact that you're passing messages. In the case of the communications net, you're passing some information forward that gets relayed to someplace else. Good traffic handling means that the messages are received same as they were sent, like you do the old people on a ring and
And the telephone.
telephone and pass the message and see what you. It's recommended to use the phonetic alphabet, at least for checking in.
Which one?
Yeah. The
Current version.
this one, the NATO.
And I hear some people say, oh, what's. Some like.
Baker instead of Bravo.
Well, that's the military.
Yeah, it's the military one.
Now, the one that a lot of Europeans use, where they use the names of cities and stuff. Hear that? What's the term traffic referred to in a net operation? Also. Yeah. Yep. Which of the following is a characteristic of good traffic handling?
Alpha.
What technique is used to ensure voice messages containing unusual words are received correctly?
Has to be Brand.
Gal.
Or you're holding the argument, you just speak back.
Yeah.
Okay. For emergency communications, a formal traffic message has 4 parts. A preamble, which has some tracking information, some sort of a check sign, which can be just the number of words, word equivalents that are in the actual body of the message. The address, the recipient, where it's going to, will be their call sign.
If you want to hear it, yeah, 80 meters every morning, starting at 7 o'clock. You have areas that, and the net control is usually 0 and pitch. Well, Cooler County, sometimes it's down in the Keys. And they have a voice person. Digital people. See. What's digital traffic? Not done. And just voice shaking words. Yeah.
Now, when you say digital traffic, like RAC or digital voice?
Usually they're doing when. No. We had 3.9. 3.95. So it's net 3%. North, on the area south, in the areas.
Now, there's also, I've listened to part of it a few times.
Florida running that's Christmas being out. The south part areas. So the north part is 5.
There's the thing called the East Coast Reflector, which is the East Coast. And you can get to it various ways. Probably the easiest is with Echolink, so you can do it from your phone. You just have to sign up for Echolink. You have to have a license. And you know, they do the check-in. Problem is, hundreds of people, and the check-in takes an hour. And they're on for like 3 hours, and it's mostly technical stuff once they get to it. So it's kind of interesting, and you probably should check out Echolink. It's a question on the general. I think it's blue.
There's an echo link question on the technician too.
Yeah, maybe. If so, we'll get to it here.
And they were talking about using shackle. I shackle,
Don't know that one.
No, shackle?
yeah. That's when you told it in the cold.
Yeah. And I've never heard that one.
Alternative.
Okay, so you've got the address of the recipient, which would more likely be their call sign, whatever the message is. And then sender's call sign address. So what information is contained in the preamble of formal traffic message?
Delta.
What is meant by check in radiogram header? And I guess these formal messages are really talking about radiogram.
Yeah. Alpha.
So it's just a simple check the count of the words as opposed to a parity where you add them all up for a checksum. Okay, FCC rules always apply, except if there's immediate safety of human life or protection of property, real emergency situation, you can operate on any channel, any mode, whatever's necessary for particular emergency. So you do it and ask questions later.
So the Chinese Navy is raiding the beaches.
And on almost all these things, you know, it's a never except. There's almost always some little exception. Third-party traffic, encoded messages, broadcasting. When do FCC rules not apply to the operation of an amateur station?
In true government fashion, it would be Delta.
Right, except. Because none of those are an exception. Are amateur station control operators ever permitted to operate outside the frequency of their license class?
Delta. Yeah.
That's the exception. Okay, satellite. Did we go through one earlier defining a space station? It's 50 kilometers above the surface of the Earth.
We didn't go through it, I don't think, but I saw it on the test.
That's what a space station is. It probably comes up later, but
I'm glad you mentioned that because the carbon line is up.
the what line?
Carbon line,
Oh,
which officially defines space.
so a space station is any satellite or whatever that's 50 kilometers up that you can communicate with.
That's an awful close station.
So, yeah, that's one slowing down. So,
Well, not the military. There's 3-letter offices that have the highly elliptical orbit satellites that come very close, and then
well, these would be LEOs. This would be like Starlink satellites.
they that low.
Yeah, they're low Earth. I think they're low Earth orbit.
So to operate VHF, UHF, you have to be a technician hire. So basically any licensed amateur can operate VHF, UHF. Satellites and space stations use what they call uplink and downlink be two different frequencies. It's different than an offset, which is fun. And they define it with a U/V or V/U, meaning the uplink versus the downlink. So a UV is going to be a UHF frequency up, a VHF frequency down, and vice versa for a VU. And that's how they, when you look at information on the satellite, it will tell you whether it's UV or V. It give you the frequencies. The modes can be basically all of them: SSB, FM, CW data. Which amateurs may contact the International Space Station on VHF bands?
Bravo.
You go with your handheld.
I guess it's line of sight if they're in the right position.
It's line of sight.
I haven't done
And the space station, most of the astronauts are now amateur.
Really?
Yeah. Probably 4 out of 5.
A long time to talk to them. You got a lot. Well,
No, but they schedule the time. They do a lot with schools,
Mhm.
and I know the Platinum Coast Club does a lot of that. And they'll go to one of the schools around here and get them set up for when the thing comes over, let the kids talk.
if they're doing satellites slow and relatively, they're just pointing and chinning. If you do it near sunrise or sunset, just have it, the satellite will not fair chance of being visible. We have to make your life point to more temperature.
Once meant by the station that a satellite is operating in UV mode.
Probably UHF. Yes, there's.
What mode of transmission is commonly used by amateur radio satellites?
Delta.
Is there any other mode?
Well, I guess
That kind of covers them all, doesn't it?
they lift your face on your throat, you go up and upper side in, I think it's when it comes down to the side.
So data would cover FSK, PSK, all those modes. Okay, power limits. I tried to get some clarity on this from Dave Slauson. Still don't exactly understand the thing. Because satellites have a power limitation with batteries and solar cells. So they use an automatic gain control to control the transmit power. So if you're sending a really strong signal up to the satellite, because of the way their AGC works, it can block a weaker signal. I understand what it says, I just don't understand physics of how it actually works. But you don't have to either, you just have to know strong signal can block it. Usually a satellite will have a beacon or beacons that send down information about the satellite, things like the voltage and temperature. In this case, they're talking about the power coming out. So you can monitor the beacon and see what kind of power it's putting out and compare that with what you, to get an idea of whether you're sending more than necessary or not. So you're only supposed to use as much power as required.
Or if you have an EV talk, that's
Or only use as much rope as required to get. What's the impact of using excessive radiated power on a satellite up?
Bravo.
Taking over and shooting out some satellite from space.
Which of the following is a way to determine whether your satellite uplink power is neither too low nor too? Charlie?
That's my answer.
All right. Which of the following is a way to determine? LEO, low Earth orbit satellites, 99 to 1,200 miles high, have an 88 to 127 minute period. They're high bandwidth and they have a very low lag time. So what is a LEO satellite?
Delta.
Yeah, Delta.
It's not low energy. A beacon. Most satellites have them. They transmit health and status information. I don't know if I have it in here. I have a chart that showed a lot of stuff that comes down on some satellite beacons. If it's not a military satellite, then anybody can see. When they're military, I'm assuming they're encoded.
Yeah, encrypted somewhat.
Except for some of the older stuff that went up as stuff. Which is, not then it's not legal to use them. There are some.
So you can listen to them, can't transfer.
Yeah, you aren't supposed to. Because they're not some still in some. But they call pirate satellite village. It's a use.
And they're still up there.
This chart showing some lights and you can see it's on and what mode it's using, powers. Like most of them have a beacon for that purpose, just to make sure the health of the satellite. What is a satellite beacon?
Yep, Delta.
Standard.
What telemetry information is typically transmitted by satellite beacons?
Now,
Who may receive telemetry from the space station?
Alpha.
Tracking. Okay, there's a bunch of programs available that will let you track satellites, and they can do it real time. They can do almost anything over the internet. They give you time, the azimuth, elevation. They can even control your antenna, track satellite, as they have the information, and even take into account Doppler shift. Change if it's got cat control, it can change the frequency on your radio, match the apparent frequency of the satellite. It requires an input of the Keplerian elements, which is
Kepler modified it slightly. It's on all the data. And because it's not 100% perfect, would update at least every 2 months or within 3 to 5 days.
well, the ARL publishes it every day.
Yeah, well, you can get it every month. Yeah.
And it's just a big file full of all kinds of information.
Yeah, well,
And that's used as an input to these programs, just how they figure out where things are. This is a typical one for the table.
if you really,
That's a space station.
So I meant the program.
Wow.
it's a semi-dumb.
Oh, Orbitron.
For semi-dumb mode, I like having both from. Because you're running satellites, visible satellites, nightly events. And then once you go in onto the object, like there's a pass tonight at 9:44 on ISS. Excuse me, a second. And then it'll show a little, what the pass is gonna look like. Heavens above. There's a free, has a span in it, it's $3, $5.
What is that?
Does anybody know?
Android only? How about, if it's iOS?
I don't know when it's iOS or not. But I got on this year's, I volunteered with
Just to decide, does anybody know what this dashed red and white line,
gray line at
gray line? It's the demarcation between daylight and dark. And propagation is different along the gray line.
Yeah.
Which of the following are provided by satellite tracking programs?
all the above.
Sounds like it. Which of the following are inputs to a satellite tracking? Okay. When you're trying to communicate with the satellite, one of the problems Doppler shift because they're moving. So you get an apparent frequency change. It increases and decreases depending on whether it's moving towards you or away from you. Like the old Sheldon on Big Bang. It is Doppler shift costume.
Yep.
There's spin fading because they tend to rotate. So the antennas are moving. So it's changing polarization of the antennas because they're typically, well, I don't know, you wouldn't call it vertical, horizontal, but they're rotating. So you get a rotation in the polarization. What is Doppler shift in reference to satellite communications?
Cal.
Yep.
What causes spin fading?
Alpha.
Big.
Oh,
Don't answer too quick. Contesting. Are you a big contester?
I pretty much despise.
Okay. Apparently the goal is to contact as many stations as possible in a fixed amount of time. Usually it'll be like 24 hours, 48 hours, like that, where they set these contests up. But you exchange the minimum amount of information because you want to get as many contacts. So you do your call sign, grid square, signal report, and that's about it. You might say, "Hi, how are you? Thank you."
So I heard you mention in one of the classes of some of the different ham units around here, old contests. Is that?
Yeah, most of them are like ARRL,
Yeah.
but I guess there's some local ones, but most of them are ARRL sponsored, like the
If you're into contests, especially gigs, good luck, you don't need to be hard. Down in Melville, they have, of course, contesting station. Have 3 meetings on top of it, gel. And last time I scared they had 3 stations.
they got 3 or 4 in the new trailer.
Yeah,
I've seen pictures, but
I haven't been in years.
so yeah, they've got a new trailer this year.
Yeah.
New 40-footer.
Are they me?
Rest room, air conditioning, everything.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they got at least three, I think maybe four states.
So if you like contesting, that's the,
They were, I mean, a lot of times are in the top 10 in the country.
Is that just from brain, right? That,
There's no money. I don't even know if you get a certificate.
you just get a little line about that long inside was,
Yeah. Or on the website, the ARO website, and they'll have a list on one side of the contest, for different contests, using the leaderboard that they call it.
Yeah.
So they have one for the VOTA. It's kind of a contest, but there's not exactly a time limit. I'm down a few thousand.
if you want to do satellite KSC plug in.
Yeah, they do that. Got a couple, and we even got one that does moon bounce.
Kevin already has a good satellite story. He had a buddy, he's also chief. So he had a buddy out in Big Bend Forest. He went off on one of the side trails. And that particular trail, the average time going through it was like about 2 weeks before, so I'm gonna take that trail. And Kevin had a regular choose whose time set up with this guy through some satellite. And both of them had some background artists. This guy's done. You know, it's gonna be a bad walk out of there or waiting 2 weeks or so to come and find him. He makes a contact, the APRS data's path. And then he calls from Florida to the Florida Cancer Range out there, less than 2 hours. Get them out. So save someone a bad day.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the contest, the whole point is to get as many contacts as you can, and you do the minimum information necessary. One of the things is your location or grid square, which is called the Maidenhead locator. Somebody told me it was because of the Maidenhead on the front of ships. That's not true. The guy that came up with it was from Maidenhead, England. So it's named after the town. And it breaks the globe up into like 348 blocks, I think it is. But basically they do 2 letters to define big square. They divide that up by 2 numbers. They further can divide it by 2 more letters and then 2 more numbers. So you can actually have an 8 character grid square, which can get you down to your just about your block.
And the military has a similar system.
Shorter than longitude and latitude.
Yeah, there's 2 flat lines, did it on the minute, hour, second.
Okay, there's also direction finding. You have set up with the directional antenna, preferably some sort of loop antenna, but even a dipole has some directionality. You have to determine whether it's this way or that way. It has nulls on the ends. And the thing is, it's kind of, I guess they call it fox and hound. In a lot of cases where they hide a transmitter and you have to go try to find it. And it's also used when somebody is transmitting when they're not supposed to, like non-amateur on a ham frequency, or there's some sort of noise that's causing interference. I know this has happened recently with the Platinum Coast Club, where they had a couple problems like that, and they got the group together and went out direction finding to try to locate where it's coming from. And in fact, the FCC just fined somebody $25,000
for our religious.
Yeah.
And that's good because they are picking up on that. For a while, they weren't doing a lot. But it does seem to be up to.
Oh, there is the grid squares for the US. And we're down here in EL, for EL 98, PI, and I don't know what the next two are.
Yeah, I'm actually OJ,
You're what?
DL98.
What operating activity involves contact stations if possible during a specified time period?
Deltas.
Which of the following is good procedure when contacting another station in a contest?
Charlie.
Yeah, sure.
What's a grid locator?
Alpha.
Which of the following methods is used to locate sources of noise, interference, or jamming?
Charlie.
Which of these items would be useful for a hidden transmitter hunt?
Bravo.
VoIP, voice over internet protocol. If you've ever used any of these commercial business phones, a lot of those, like Cisco's and stuff, are using voice over internet. And it's just a technique where you digitize the voice and send it as packets. There's the Internet Radio Linking Project, or IRLP, and then there's Echolink. The difference is IRLP requires you to have radio to make contact with an IRLP, to call it receive access point. Where Echolink is strictly from like your phone or computer into the internet. There's no radio involved on your end. Could be where you're going to on the other end. You could be coming out on repeaters. In both cases, you have to register and show that you actually have a license. In Echolink, you have to register your call sign, and I think I had to send them a copy of my license.
Technically,
Yeah,
I don't know if they actually,
I know I had to do it for somebody.
yeah, they verify it. Not just FCC database.
All I had to do was sign up for a cell phone.
Okay. And it's just a lot of, it's kind of like SARS and those, bunch of repeaters and gateways connected together. The basic difference is IRLP requires a radio to contact the access point. Echolink is strictly phone, computer, some digital device to get into the internet. This is kind of showing a cartoon-like IRLP going from his handy-talkie to a local node, which could be your own or somebody around here, tied into the internet. It'd be like talking to a hotspot, D-Star, DMR. And it comes out the other end, and it may go to a repeater to another. This is what Echolink looks like on a computer, one of the apps. And you can see all the different areas, and it's kind of like a big directory, and you can click on somebody to call them, and if they're online, they may answer. Just because they show up doesn't mean they're online. Answer. What is the Internet Radio Linking Project? Always called it protocol. They say it's a project. Alpha. What is Voice over Internet Protocol?
Yep.
What's required before using the Echolink system? Charlie. Which of the following protocols enables an amateur station to transmit through a repeater without using a radio to initiate the transmission? Delta. Okay, nodes. That's what IRLP or Echolink calls the access points. You access them with the node number using a DTMF signal, which is a dual tone multi-frequency audio signal, which if you've ever done a touch-tone phone, that's a DTMF. It's unique tone pairs for each number, so it's easy to detect it. There's also gateways that allow you to connect a lot of these stations together and go between different protocols. There's gateways out there now where you can go from DMR to D-Star to All-Star to Fusion to Echolink to almost anything. This is a DTMF, what the actual frequencies are. So if you punch a 1, you get both a 697 and a 1209. You get that kind of warble tone. Been around a long, long time. How is over-the-air access to IRLP nodes accomplished?
Bravo.
What type of signaling uses pairs of audio tones?
Alpha.
What is an amateur radio station that connects other stations on to the internet?
Alpha.
That's good. Are you echo-linking?
It's just a DT.
Okay. Any questions about those? You're going to get those 3 questions right, though.
Oh, heck so.
All that for 3 questions.
Well, I had to remember DT is dual tone. That's how I remember the touchtone. AT&T owns the touchtone. And then I remember SS is silent.
Okay.
Yeah.